Screw the tradition.
If there was actual competition in the East, he wouldn't have skated to the conference finals every single year.
I'm not going to sacrifice the integrity of playoff basketball and those amazing playoff rivalries.
Bring it! But where are the ladies? Make yourself heard on First Take Your Take later today. Head over to Facebook. Check out our debate on Facebook Watch. They are live. Post your video reaction for a chance to debate with Stephen A. or Max. Next week's going to be fun. We got some heavy hitters in the house. Jalen Ramsey with the Jags will be with us on Wednesday. I wonder if he enjoyed watching the Patriots lose in the Super Bowl. Don't miss it.
This is SportsCenter right now. I'm Doug Kazarian. The NBA returned last night after its extended week-long break for All-Star festivities. And we have some interesting races at the top of each conference, no doubt. But the rest of the playoff brackets also offer some intrigue, including where the Thunder will finish with their remade roster. Thunder losers of 6 of 9 entering the All-Star break. Russell Westbrook and company in Sacto last night, and everyone on fire early on. OKC, 44 points in the first quarter. That's a team high for any quarter this season. 7 of 10 from downtown in the first frame. But the Kings coming back, fourth quarter, down 2. Vince Carter, a little early with about 8 seconds to go. Put back no, and then put back yes. Justin Jackson, so we're tied. 1 second. Russell Westbrook, ball game. 8 go-ahead made field goals in the final 5 seconds over the past 5 years. That's tops in the NBA and a much-needed OKC win. Now back to First Take.
Doug, thank you. OKC 5th in the West right now, but 3-0 against Golden State in Houston. Stephen A., what's the ceiling for the Thunder?
Well, I mean, the sky's the limit, because you got to remember something. With Houston being a formidable threat that they are, a lot can depend on the seedings. Let's say, for example, hypothetically, Max, that it's one of those situations where OKC ends up going up against Houston before they have to go against a Golden State, because Houston's the 2 seed and Golden State's the 1 seed. But OKC ends up being the 3 seed instead of San Antonio. That can make things interesting, because you remember they get to avoid the Warriors until the conference finals. And who knows what's going to happen in a particular situation like that. I do have questions about OKC's depth. I don't have too much of a question about their starting 5. I think their starting 5 can compete with anybody, even with Roberson going down, because the 4 that you still have left there, 3 of those guys are your primary offensive weapons, and Steven Adams can be a monster when he wants to be. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and the fact that they can elevate their level of defensive play, and anybody at any given moment of the big 3 can explode, whether it's Paul George shooting 43% from three-point range, whether it's Carmelo Anthony taking a step back, only launching a little over 15 shots per game, but still being efficient enough. Russell Westbrook shooting nearly 45% from the field. You look at what they bring to the table offensively, and you know what they can do defensively. Again, the questions about their depth are a problem. But in the end, if you get to avoid Golden State until the conference finals, who knows what that could materialize into. So I look at it from the standpoint that Oklahoma City is capable of making noise against anybody, because they're physical, they're rough and rugged, they come at you. And Russell Westbrook, I can't think of anybody who wants to go against Golden State more than this guy does. The fact that that's a reality makes things very intriguing. Of course, the Warriors are the favorites, but it makes it very, very intriguing, and I love the notion and the possibility of that, and I don't rule out anything right now.
So don't rule out anything. Would that include, meaning the ceiling is they could win a championship this year?
Yeah, I think the ceiling is that ceiling is they could win the championship. It's slim, but I'm not going to say zero. I'm not going to say zero.
Slim to none, and Slim just left the building. Listen, Stephen A., seeding is important here. It's absolutely important, and it's the reason that their ceiling is, in fact, the Western Conference Finals, but no further. Look, they're built for the playoffs. More, you look at the Rockets, you wonder, is that going to work in the playoffs? Not just because of the orthodoxy from years ago where, a bunch of jump shooters, it's not going to work. Because we all know it's still about the paint. And the Rockets got 2 guys who can get to the paint, which opens up the shooting, right? So it's just because someone's not, big isn't sitting there posting doesn't mean that it's still not about the paint. That's really, and they have guys who can do that. So I'm not saying we don't know if that's going to work in the playoffs. I mean mean that we see players on that team who have come up a little small compared to their normal levels of performance in the playoffs. And even in Chris Paul's case, when the numbers haven't been small, the team performance has. And as the leader of the team, I'm sure he accepts that responsibility, right? So, meantime, the Thunder are, their key players, their top two players are extremely athletic, not just elite performers in Westbrook and Paul George, but elite athletes, which I think does make a difference in the playoffs. And Carmelo Anthony, even if your game plan is make Carmelo beat you, all right, he might. Carmelo Anthony gets hot, he might beat you if that's the game that, So they are built for the playoffs in several ways, more than some of the other teams, particularly Houston, you would think on paper. In other words, their playoff record you would expect to be better than, or performance you'd expect to be more impressive than their regular season performance. Here's the problem, Stephen A. The seeding matters because they're not going to be a 1 or a 2 seed. I think we can agree on that, right? Therefore, in order to get to the finals, assuming health, like let's assume that no major team has a major catastrophic injury to a key player. Assuming health, they're going to have to upset both the Rockets and the Warriors, whoever they have to play for. Like, that's not going to happen. Maybe they have an upset in them because it turns out that in the playoffs, they're more ready for that kind of game than, let's say, the Rockets. And I doubt it. I doubt they beat the Rockets. But let's say they do beat the Rockets. They ain't going to then turn around and upset the Warriors, too. It's just too much. They're going to have to get a little lucky to even beat one of those teams. And luck does not play that big a role in the NBA as it does in the NFL, Major League Baseball, and other major team sports. I don't see them with 2 best-of-7 upsets in them against demonstrably superior teams.
Well, see, first of all, I disagree from the standpoint of Houston. Now, if you want to say luck with Golden State, I get all of that because Golden State is really about their level of interest combined with their health. And as long as they're healthy and they're focused, it's very, very few teams, if anybody, that can beat them in the NBA on any given night for that matter. But in the case of the Houston Rockets, here's what I think you're missing. Houston is incredibly formidable. That's the ideal matchup, them against Golden State in the Western Conference Finals. It would be sensational. I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. But let's understand that the imminent league MVP, as far as I'm concerned, which is James Harden, as spectacular as he is, devoid of ball movement, you play right in the OKC hands. If you just about dancing on cats and going one-on-one, that's not going to work. Chances are with Chris Paul there, that's going to be minimized compared to what we saw last year. The flip side to it, however, is that those other guys have to step up and be able to hit shots. I like Eric Gordon. I like Trevor Ariza. To a lesser degree, you got to respect Ryan Anderson because he has a history of being able to hit perimeter shots. That's why he walked into the season being owed $60 million over the next 3 years, because we all know that he can shoot the ball at least from time to time. And Clint Capella is clearly a better fit for that Houston roster than Dwight Howard ever was, even though Dwight Howard is looking pretty decent in Charlotte these days. My point to you is that I have to look at those guys and believe wholeheartedly that under no circumstances are they going to let you down in terms of their ability to hit shots. And that's what I think that you're missing here. You can talk about Golden State with a degree of certainty, and nobody would dismiss that. But we can't talk about Houston with that certainty. Do I believe Houston could do it? You're damn right. They're big time. I understand it. But we have seen no evidence that we can trust that what they do in a regular season, you can rely upon them doing it come postseason. The first round series over OKC, you talking about, even though a couple of them had decent games, that's James Harden's show. All right, and then against the Spurs, he ran out of gas in that last game 6. CP3 there now, probably not going to happen. But I'm still saying, when you go against OKC, who's top 5 offensively, Max, and they're going to prove defensively, it's going to be real interesting to see what they do. I think you're overlooking
something else. You're overlooking coaching here when you talk about the Rockets versus OKC. Billy Donovan was a better playoff coach, I would say, than Scotty Brooks, based on what I've seen. I thought Scotty Brooks was very good in terms of developing talent. Made a lot of curious decisions, I thought, in the postseason. And Billy Donovan seemed to motivate them a little bit differently. But Mike D'Antoni's a little different kind of cat. Mike D'Antoni, I'll give you an example from boxing, Stephen A., because you and I used to chop up the NBA and the fight game all the time when we were doing radio in New York in the halls and stuff. You know, when you first watched Mike
Yep.
Tyson coming up, it wasn't just that he was this talent. It's that his trainer, Cus D'Amato, had a very specific kind of game plan for him. So his motions were automatic. His basic strategy was more cohesive than his opponents. And it was almost like a mismatch of strategy. That's the Rockets. Mike D'Antoni has a comprehensive, cohesive kind of offensive strategy that's just different than guys like Billy Donovan. And it helps lesser players, I think, overachieve to begin with. But then when you combine that with two MVP caliber players in Harden and CP3, and in CP3, you have a defensive floor general that has improved that defense, that team intensity in terms of defense, leaps and bounds. It's just when you watch Houston, you're watching a different kind of animal than when you watch OKC. They beat the brakes off of teams. Everyone, it seems.
You know what? Watching Golden State last night, Max, even though they won the game against the Clippers because Steph Curry put on the show, we'll get into that in a second, but their defense is still not where you want it to be, nor you expect it to be. You expect more from them. You look at San Antonio, you know defense is going to show up. You look at OKC, despite their struggles here and there, for the most part, you know they're going to show up. Here's the problem with Houston with Mike D'Antoni. When they don't make shots, unlike the other teams that can lock it down, they got questions about Houston. Now, their defense is considerably better this year, and I've noticed that, and I understand that. But what I'm saying is, come playoff basketball with off days, where you're rested, where teams get to game plan for you in preparation for a 7-game series. What we've customarily seen with Mike D'Antoni teams is when they're making shots, they dictate pace, and that changes everything. When they don't, and they have to rely on something else to get them there, Mike D'Antoni has not been able to do that.
All right.
And that is my concern with the Houston Rockets.
Let's keep it moving, though, guys. As far as OKC, we're going to learn a lot on Saturday night, ABC primetime, when they face the Warriors at Oracle. But I want to stay on the West Side. The Dubs entered the All-Star break struggling, going 4-4, but they got back on track last night, taking down the Clippers. Steph Curry dropped 44 points and had 10 assists. Max, what did this performance tell you?
Well, Kenny Smith said it all last night during halftime. Guys, here's what it told me. Think about this Warriors team for a second. I'm really just paraphrasing what he said here because when he said it, I thought that's exactly right. Steph Curry is what, Stephen A? What's Steph Curry? How would you describe him?
The greatest shooter I have ever seen.
Me too. That's the greatest shooter in the history of basketball. That's Steve Nash 2.0, a mobile artillery unit whose handles let him get anywhere and whose range is essentially unlimited. As you saw last night at the buzzer beater, I forgot if it was the half or the quarter, where he hits that ridiculously long-range three, and it wasn't a heave, it was a shot. The greatest shooter in the history of the game, Stephen A., who is basically unguardable because of his handles, is never doubled. Think about that. He's on a team where you can't double him. So that's what, watching that game yesterday, that's what you saw. You said, wait a minute, because of Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr's coaching philosophy and offense, you can't send two guys at the greatest shooter who ever lived? Good luck with that. And that's the reason the Warriors, in the end, will win the championship. They just got too many weapons.
What it tells me is that when you watch Steph Curry get off, if somehow, some way, you can find a way to neutralize Curry, not to say that you can, but there are nights, rare nights, where he's just, I don't know whether he's off or not into it or whatever, because when he's focused, he doesn't miss. The point that I'm trying to make to you is that you look at the Golden State Warriors, and after 3 straight trips to the NBA Finals, and even before then, there are times where you sense a level of vulnerability because of defense, particularly on the interior, or you have a situation where other guys are not willing to step up and be that aggressor. Kevin Durant is just Mr. Efficiency. Offensively, he's just big time. We all know that he's one of the top 3 players on the planet as far as I'm concerned. He can do what he wants when he wants. But the want to, in terms of giving me the basketball, let me drop 50 on you tonight. Y'all take the night off. It's all right. He ain't that kind of guy. Steph Curry is. And when Steph Curry is that way, there's really no match. When Steph Curry looks the way that he looks last night, just get your broomsticks ready. Most people are going to get swept right out of there. Yeah. Ain't going to even win a game.
Because the Clippers played well.
When he doesn't play that way, they'll make it up. Exactly. I understand that. Yeah. But the Clippers played well, but at the same time,
and there's nothing they could do.
You're devoid of a superstar. You're devoid of a superstar. You're devoid of that go-to guy. So, in other words, sometimes that's more difficult for a team to defend against because who's going to beat us tonight? Lou Williams is their guy, sure. But you look at some of the other guys. Tobias Harris dropped 22 last night. Oh, don't give me Gallinari. Don't get me started with Gallinari.
He's playing very well recently.
By the way, he needs to lose some weight. He needs to lose some weight. Just a tip. Trust me on it. He needs to lose some weight. Point is that at the end of the day, if you're devoid of that superstar marquee guy, then it's difficult to decide, okay, who's going to be the guy that they go to. So, you're just waiting around to see what they throw at you next.
No, what I mean was I was going to your point, Stephen A.
I
was going to your point, like when Steph gets hot like that, I'm saying the Clippers played basically not as well as they can, but they played a pretty good game. They were doing what they could, and when Steph gets hot like that, mere mortals have no shot. But I want to talk about your because, this is an ongoing theme that we discuss. I think hero ball does have a place in the NBA. It's, Michael Jordan's the greatest hero ball player ever, right? And it's not a coincidence. He's also the greatest player ever. But I think the reason Kevin Durant wanted to go to Golden State, I think the reason you can't ever double Steph is because that's not really important to those guys. They share the ball. They move the ball. They're unselfish with the ball. And I think that starts with Steph Curry, by the way. When you have a superstar who's willing to set the screens that he sets and do all the things that he does, it sets the tone. It makes other guys want to play with him. And more importantly, it helps that superstar. That's the reason you can't double him, because the ball's going to move. And because of that mentality, not only has Klay developed and Draymond's become a shooter, because Steph spaces the floor differently because he shoots from so deep, but it also attracted KD. So you're focusing on the fact that he has that thing in him sometimes that just wants to give you the business. Okay, fine. But the key to me is that none of those guys rely on it, and that's why they're impossible to guard.
The dissertation on that particular issue is not necessary. You can't double Steph because Klay and Kevin Durant are on the floor. It's that simple.
You ain't lying.
You could double Steph if he was on the floor with Jaja Pachulia and JaVale McGee. You could double him if he's on the court with a bunch of
all
those
five guys.
But if you got Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, how the hell you going to double him? You can't do it. You just can't do it. But they do. Here's the difference. They'll give the ball to Durant, and Durant will do his thing. Whereas when Steph gets hot, there's a concerted, collective effort to find this man and give him the basketball. That's different than what they do with Durant.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically the bottom line is if Steph's shot is hot, nobody can stop them. More NBA on the way, gentlemen. The Wizards got the best of LeBron and the Cavs last night, and they did it without John Wall. We'll tell you what this means for the Eastern Conference next.
This is the definition of play.